All right, welcome to our explainer. If you're at all interested in the FBI, think of this as your personal exam review. We're going to cover its past, its present, and its future. We'll look at how a pretty controversial idea turned into one of the most powerful agencies on the planet, and get this, where it's hunting for its next generation of talent.
Okay, so here's how we're going to break it down. First up, we're diving into the FBI's kind of secret, pretty contentious origin story. Then we'll jump to the present and see what its mission is today. After that, we'll look at the skills you'd actually need to be a modern agent, and we'll wrap up by pinpointing the exact US cities where the next crop of top agents are probably hitting the books right now.
All right, let's get right into it. We have to go back over 100 years for this one. It's a story full of political drama, presidential power plays, and a last name you will definitely recognize. So the story kicks off in 1906. President Teddy Roosevelt picks this guy, Charles Bonaparte, to be his attorney general. And yeah, you heard that name right, Bonaparte. He was the grandnephew of the Napoleon. Wild, right? Anyway, Roosevelt had this grand vision for an elite federal investigative force. But there was just one tiny problem, and that problem was Congress. You see, Congress was, let's just say, not a fan of this idea. Lawmakers were really worried about creating some kind of national secret police, and they basically said, no way. To make their point, on May 27, 1908, they passed a law that flat out banned the Department of Justice from using investigators from the Secret Service, which back then was where they got most of their detectives. So what happened? Did Roosevelt and Bonaparte just pack it in? Nope. They got clever. They found a workaround. They literally just waited for Congress to leave town for its summer break. Then Bonaparte used money the Justice Department already had to just hire his own investigators. It was a brilliant, classic political move, using an administrative loophole to create a whole new agency without ever needing a vote. And that's how it happened. A memo went out on July 26, 1908, and that's the date the FBI now calls its birthday. It created this new force of, get this, just 34 special agents. That's it. A super tiny group born out of a big political fight that would one day become the massive FBI we all know. Okay, so let's fast forward to today. How did that tiny, controversial group of 34 agents go from, chasing gangsters and old school cars to becoming this giant premier national security and intelligence organization? Let's take a look. The modern FBI has a very clear mission statement, and it's really a two-part job. First, protect the American people from all kinds of threats. And second, uphold the US Constitution. So it's this constant balancing act between security and liberty. Now, this is where things get really interesting. Look at these priorities. They tell you everything you need to know about the modern world. Yeah, fighting violent crime is still in there, but look at the top three: terrorism, foreign intelligence and espionage, and cyber operations. I mean, that is a massive shift from where the Bureau started. So how do they actually handle all this stuff? Well, the Bureau is split into these super specialized branches. You've got the National Security Branch, which is all about counterterrorism and counterintelligence, stopping threats from other countries or terrorist groups. Then there's the Intelligence Branch, which is kind of like the brains of the operation. And you can't forget the CCRSB. That's where you'll find the critical cyber division on the front lines of digital warfare. Basically, each branch is its own little world, built to fight a very specific kind of modern threat. Okay, so if the mission has changed that dramatically, it only makes sense that the agents have to change too, right? The skill set needed today is a world away from what those first 34 investigators brought to the table. And that leads us to a really important question, especially for anyone out there thinking about a career in this field. What kind of skills is the FBI actually looking for to tackle the challenges of the 21st century? And here's your answer. This list says it all. A modern agent isn't just a gumshoe detective anymore. They have to be an intelligence analyst, a cyber whiz, a legal expert, a counterintelligence pro. The Bureau is actively hunting for people with deep, specialized knowledge in fields that literally didn't exist when the agency was created. So let's say you're a student right now, and you're building up these exact skills. You're aiming for a big career in federal law enforcement. The question is, where should you be? Like, what city gives you the best shot? Well, we actually looked at the data for 2026, and we've got some answers. All right, check this out. Based on university rankings and what employers are looking for,
These 5 cities are the top hotspots for developing the skills the FBI wants. Each city has its own unique vibe and opportunities. Let's zoom in on a couple of them. First up, Boston. You could call it the intellectual capital of the US. With schools like Harvard and MIT, it's an absolute powerhouse. If you're into public policy, intelligence analysis, or the legal side of things like civil rights or corruption cases, the sheer brain power concentrated in this one city is just unbeatable. But what if you're a tech person? Well, if you've got your sights set on the cyber division, there is nowhere better to be than the San Francisco Bay Area. It's the Silicon powerhouse, the global epicenter of tech. The access you get to internships and cutting-edge expertise in AI and digital forensics, it's just on another level. This brings up a really practical choice that, honestly, a lot of students have to make. Do go for a top-tier city like New York. I mean, the universities and networking are incredible, but the rent is, well, it's New York. Or do you look at a rising hub like Atlanta? It's way more affordable, the tech scene is exploding, and it's home to some huge companies. It's a real trade-off. So we'll leave you with that to chew on. For the next wave of federal agents, maybe the biggest decision isn't just what you study, but where you study. So what's your play? The high prestige, high cost city, or the more affordable up and coming hub? Something to think about. Thanks for listening.